Hello, my name is Emily Bauer. I am your educator, solution consultant for Ohio. Today I'm going to walk you through the steps in really setting up your Edmentum assessment account, assigning a learner a test, and where to access students' results to make those outcomes meaningful. And so to get started, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The first thing that you're going to see when you log in is the Sensei page. This is essentially our data dashboard. It gathers information about where students are at in their learning, whether it's them taking the test or progressing through their prescription. From this page, you'll be able to see alerts whether a student has completed a test or if they've been locked out of a module within their prescription. And so one thing that you will use a lot in the Sensei page is this alerts tab. Other than that, you do have a communications tab if you ever want to send a message to a student. You'll be able to view your students in the Students tab, see what they're actively working on when they last logged in or if they ever need to reset their password. All these other tabs are unnecessary when it comes to utilizing the Edmentum assessment platform. To get started, we're going to start in the Administration Center. Your Administration Center is where you're going to go to adjust any particular settings to your system, add any users, or deactivate or delete users. To get started, you always want to start on the Users tab. As you can see here, we have a couple options of adding users. You can manually enter your users, or we have a batch processing option if you have a large amount of students. In that batch processing option, you will see that it's a simple format that you will need to follow. We do have history where we'll document any uploads that you create in the program. You will upload your files here. And then we do have the files format specifications for you, including a sample file that you can use to really identify which fields to enter in that CSV file. If you have a small amount of students, you'll simply go to the Manage Users option. From this screen, if you have some users already entered in the system, they will be listed below. You do have some action items, so if any of those users are old in your system, you can simply deactivate the users. If they have no progress, then you can delete them. Once you delete or deactivate a user, they'll no longer be listed in the active users list here on your Manage User screen. You at any time can also edit users, making adjustments. You might have a student that was in the system last year, and so we just need to adjust the grade level that they're in now. You can just go into that edit user option to do so. But to create a user, you simply click on the Create a User button. From the screen, you will see that there are red asterisks next to a wide variety of fields. You will select what type of user you're entering. So if you are adding an instructor to the system or you're adding a learner to the system, you may have somebody that is going to take charge of the program so that you may want to create them as a program administrator, which will give them access to make administrative adjustments to a particular program, or you want to set up an account administrator, which would give somebody access to all programs in this particular platform. At any point, you are going to enter their username and password. This is not set in stone. You can always edit the student at any point and create a new username and password if necessary. You're going to select all the options for account structure location so that that student isn't limited to the program access. And at the end, you simply click Save and Return to Users here. Once you have all of your students in the system, the next thing we want to check is just to make sure our applications are up to date. So we are going to click on the Applications option here. From this screen, you will just check you want to continue to enable messaging and notebooks for your students, and then most importantly, ensure that the time zone is correct for you. Once you've entered all of the information in the application feature of your settings, you're going to save that change right here. And then we move on to our next step, which is initially setting up the program to open up access to your Edmentum assessments. So once we go here to click on programs, more than often you will not have one program listed here if this is the first time entering into the system. If you are coming back to use the system again for this year, you may have the program already listed here, to which you will not need to create a program. However, if you do need to create a program, you simply create a program, provide a name for that program. You are going to select that you're going to administer this program using Edmentum assessments. And then you're going to click, if you have multiple schools, you're going to click the school that is it is appropriate for. If you have one school listed, you can just simply click that first box there. And then you're going to save and close. Once you see your program listed below, the next thing you'll want to do is click that refresh button here on your screen. That refresh button is going to allow you to have your program then populated under the Edmentum assessment tab above. Once you see your program listed there, you can then next step would be to jump into that program. Now, if this is the first time being in the program, you are not going to have any active information here on your home page. This information will soon populate once you go to assign a learner a test. You will also see that we have a wide variety of tabs here on top. My Learners tab is going to populate the students that have been assigned a test. So if you have a particular student that you want to keep your eye on, instead of trying to find all of the assignments or tests that you have assigned to that student, you can simply click on that My Learners tab, find your student, click on that student, and see where they're actively working. And we'll take a further look at this. The My Assignments tab. Any assignment that you create, which you will assign a test to your learners in, will be listed here in My Assignments. At any point, you can edit assignments or you can add learners to assignments. We will also go to My Assignments tab to create the assignment and assign your students a test. We also have the Assessment Catalog. This tab is used to see what tests that you have current access to. And then at any point, if you want to view some of the questions inside the test, you can go to the assessment catalog and view those test questions from there. Lastly, we have our Reports tab. The Reports tab is where you're going to go after your students have completed the test to view the outcomes of their test in a wide variety of formats, and we'll take a further look here. But to get started, we want to assign our students a test. So we're going to go to the My Assignments. Here I have a list of current assignments that I have already created, but I want to start here because some of you may not even have a list of assignments created. So to create assignment, we are going to hit that Create an Assignment tab. All of the learners that you've entered in your administration center are going to show up here. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is decide what test you want to assign to start. So for me, I want to focus on Ohio end of course biology. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to select my students that I need to assign that Ohio biology end of course. I'm going to hit that Next button in the upper right corner. From this page, I'm going to go into my test packs. If you purchased a particular test and you're not seeing it in your test packs, please reach out to myself or your educational partner, and they will assist you in making sure that that's entered into the system. For this demo account, I do not have access to biology, so we're going to shift over to ELA. I'm going to assign my students ELA 1. And during the demos for majority of our customers on the Edmentum assessments, as I had mentioned, our Common Core English 9 and 10 are fully aligned to the Ohio Learning Standards, as well as our Common Core Algebra 1 and Geometry. So I'm going to select that first test, and I'm going to need to decide on a start and due date for when I want the students to simply complete the test. This is not anything to do with their prescription. This is just when I want them to have that test completed. So I want to give my students to the end of this week to complete that English 1 test for end of course. Once I've selected that due date and start date, I'm going to click Next. And from this page, I'm going to create an assignment name for my students. So I might decide to do English 1, end of course, fall test. Here my name is going to populate in the instructors. Now, if you have other teachers that you would like to have access to the students' test results, first you're going to need to make sure that you enter them as users in your administration center. If they are entered in the administration center, you'll be able to simply click right next to your name. It'll give you a list of all your active instructors. Select the instructor that you would like to add, and that individual will now have access to the learners in this assignment. You will also need to decide whether you want to include instructor-graded assessment items. Now, majority of the tests in the end of course are now removing some of those open response questions. So on average, majority of the Ohio educators are removing those and selecting no here. The next thing you need to do is select the number of tries before the mastery test is locked. Once your learners have completed the test, they will have access to a prescription. In the prescription, it is going to include modules associated with the standards gaps that the student has. Each module has a tutorial followed by a mastery test. That mastery test is a formative assessment to ensure us that the student now understands that content and is ready to move forward. So you as the educator need to select how many attempts on that mastery test you want to give the student. On average, majority of our customers do select 3, but you can set that parameter to what you feel is appropriate for your students and within your building. If I select 3, that means that my students have up to 3 attempts to master that test. If they do not master it on the 3rd attempt, it will lock the mastery test, require the student to go back through the tutorial before it unlocks the test, that once again for the student. Each attempt, the student is presented with a new set of items. Once I've made all those decisions, I can click that next button again. On this next screen, it is going to simply give me an overview of all the selections I've made in the previous steps. If everything looks correct, then I can click on Create an Assignment. I will get a box that says the assignment has been successfully created. I will hit OK. Once I hit OK, it's going to jump me back to my assignments, to which my new assignment will be listed here. So if you see your assignment there, that is showing you that you've done those steps correctly. Once you see that there, just remember that the start date that you've entered for your students on this test will be the date that it becomes available to your students when they first log in. And so from here, you do have some action items. At any point, you can view the assignment details, and you can also add learners. I'm going to click on View Assignment Details. One thing you need to understand even before your students start the test is if you do see an error of any kind and you want to start fresh, at any point you can deactivate the assignment and it will no longer show up on your list of active assignments. At any point you can also edit your assignment. If you need to add an instructor or make an adjustment to the mastery attempts, you can certainly do that and edit. From this page, you can also add any learners prior to the test at any point. One thing that is important is if you're giving your students a small testing window, if for some reason they do not show up at school or they call in sick and they're out that week, you need to make an adjustment to the due date. You can go into the individual learner's name. From here, you can scroll down and you can edit that start and due date for that individual learner. You can also deactivate a learner at any point. You may have made the mistake in adding a learner to a test that wasn't supposed to have access, so you can simply come into that learner and deactivate that learner from the assignment. Now, the next question will really be is, once my students have completed the test, where can I go to access their information? And so from here, you can either access your students' information by simply clicking on the assignment that you would like to view and taking a look at all the students that have completed the test. As a reminder, when you first log in the Edmentum Sensei page, in that first alert, you will get the alert to who has completed the test. So you can go into the assignment and you can click on that student and get access to their test information. Another way you can access your students' test results is by simply clicking on the My Learners tab. You may have a particular student that you want to keep your eye on, and so in order to do so, you can come into the My Learners tab, click on the learner that you would like to view. From here, I can see that my learner has completed the 2 tests that I've assigned to them. And they have the green checkbox here telling me that they've completed the test. So I want to take a look at what their prescription looks like, what their results look like. So I can click on the assignment name. From here, I can take a look at the assessment details for that particular test. So I see that my student took the ELA 2 test, and here are their test results. So I noticed that my student performed at a 42%. They got 24 out of 57 points. I decided to remove the instructor graded questions, so I don't have to worry about that. The auto grading, it's showing 49% because out of the 49 points, I got a 49%. I can also take a look at my students' test results based off question type. So I see a construct and response was removed, so I don't need to worry about that. But I also see that my students struggled with graphic gap match, as well as really scoring kind of low on those multi-part questions. So I may just want to keep my eye on that. I also have information of how much time it took my student to complete the test and the completion date. From this page, I can also take a look at my learner's assessment report. Here it outlines the various reporting categories of the test and my students' performance in those various reporting categories. This is a nice report that if you do have teachers or parents that want to take a look at how their student performed on the benchmark, you can provide that information to them. Also from the Assessment Details tab, you can access your learner's assessment results. You can look at the drop box of questions here and select all the ones in red to view which ones they got incorrect. This is a great conversation piece with your student. You can have your student maybe reread the question and then have a conversation to, what made you decide this is the right response? What were the key points in the question that made you think that way? So this is a nice piece that you can use to have a further conversation with your student. Now, if you want to take a look at what has then been prescribed to the student, we are going to simply click on the prescription details. From here, I can see what's included in my student's prescription. One thing to note as the educator, that everything that has the view next to it is content that the student needs to complete. Everything else is just the title to the module. From this page, you do have some action items available. If a student is working on an item, you can either set to lock it, exempt, or hide it. But as they continue further into their prescription, it'll give you even more capabilities of readjusting the progress status in a tutorial or resetting an activity. So if you're walking by and you notice that your student is just clicking right through the tutorial, not taking things serious, you can come into the prescription and reset the activity if you choose to do so. But at any point, you can lock content if you don't want students to work in a particular area because you know that the instructor is going to be covering that next week and you want to line it. You can certainly do that. You can also talk to a student's instructor. You find out that the student is really showing a lot of strengths and making interference about literature here, so they don't need to really cover any of this tutorial. And so you can set that to be exempt for the student, and it will not require the student to have to go through any of the content or mastery tests for this module. You can also hide content if you have a student with a lengthy prescription and you don't want them to become overwhelmed. You can lock or hide areas of content from the bottom and slowly introduce that back to the student as they get further through their learning path. At any point, you as the educator can have access to any of these tutorials or mastery tests by simply clicking on that tutorial and it'll pop it up. Now, once all your students have completed the test and you want to get a better visual of the outcomes, you do have access to a wide variety of reports. From here, our most popular report is that Strengths and Needs report. The Strengths and Needs report can be done by an individual student or be done by an assignment. So if you have a group of students doing the same test in an assignment and you want to populate their performance all together, we can do that as well. This is an example of an individual learner's Strengths and Needs report. So John performed at a 49%, which is partially meeting learning standards. We are going to populate all of the reporting categories for John here so that we immediately know where John needs to work on and where he's strong at. We can also take a look at the category breakdown in a different format. So here are the different reporting categories, and we're going to populate John's name based off his performance in those categories. This category breakdown is really nice when you do have multiple students populated in the report because you'll immediately know based off of the data analysis and probability standards 14, you'll know which list of students here are going to need additional support with that category. And this is also nice if you do decide to do some maybe small group intervention. Another popular test or report, I should say, is our learner daily usage. If you have concerns that a student is not actively working in the system and spending that time on task, you can pull that learner's daily usage report here. We also have a learner's progress report. So if at any point you want to view that progress report by just the individual test, you can select the test, or we can do it by prescription. And I'm just going to see if we can pull one by prescription to give you a better understanding of what that would look like. So I'm going to select my learner here. And hopefully we can get some information here. So you can see you can select this report by the test, which will just give you detailed information about their performance on the test, their score, their time in the test, and when it was completed. But we also have a report for the learner's progress in the prescription. And I like to pull this one because this is a really nice one that you can provide to parents as well, because you may have some parents that come to you and ask, my child is retaking the end of course. What are you doing to ensure that they're getting proper intervention prior to the test? You can pull this prescription report. It's going to show where the learner is currently working in, how many tries or attempts that they've logged into this particular tutorial. It'll start to provide scores on the mastery test. So a lot of detailed information about what they're actually working on in these in particular topics. Now, another really helpful report that I like to reference to as well is our assessment item response report. Now, this report gives you an outline of the test questions, what the item type was, the reporting category, what standard it is associated with. And then it's going to give you your list of learners here so that you can see the percentage of learners scoring 70% or more on the question, or the percentage of learners not answered. So you'll be able to take a look at which questions were the most challenging to all of the students that took the test, so that if you wanted to do some type of group intervention, you could cover some of those questions as a group and answer them as a group, so that you as a group can create strategies on answering those formats of questions, as well as the content that is in the item as well. So this is just a brief outline of the Edmentum assessment platform. You should now know how to add users to your program, set up a program for the Edmentum assessments, assign your students a test, and once that test is completed, you now know where to go to access your students' information. One other thing I like to show you is that we do have a lot of great online resources from our website. Here's our website at edmentum.com. You can simply click on support. From this page, you will just slip down to assessments, online help. Click on the Edmentum assessments. And from here, we've got some most popular how-to topics within Edmentum assessments, but you can also search. We have some user's guides saved in here, so you can simply type in user guide. And from here, I'll just show you all the different guides that we have, but one that you may want to use that is helpful is the Edmentum Assessments User's Guide. And that Edmentum Assessments User's Guide really helps to just have a reference book next to you in case you forget any of these steps in the video. And we do visually show you in the user's guide the step-by-step process and how to, go about logging in, setting up your students, as well as assigning those tests. So this will be a nice reference tool if you do need to access that. Other than that, if you do have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by email or phone, or reach out to your partnership manager. I thank you for your time, and you enjoy the rest of your day.